What is up, guys? Welcome to my review for The Flash Season 5, Episode 11, titled Seeing Red, which was a much better return to the season in general after the mid-season break than Episode 10 was. In Episode 10, we didn't really get much of Barry Allen. He was benched for most of the episode because the Grant Gustin, the actor, was busy filming 2 extra episodes in Elseworlds, but also we didn't get much of Cicada in that episode either. This episode has a lot of Barry Allen, a crap ton of Cicada as well, so it's a much better return to the episode, or I mean the season, in my opinion. This episode begins with a lot of Cicada, with him going on a killing spree, killing a lot of meta-humans. They said in the last 12 hours before this episode, or during this episode at the beginning, he killed more people than he had in the entirety of his career combined, and that was obviously pretty insane. That led to Team Flash going after them, and I think this whole first couple scenes in the episode with Cicada going on a killing spree, Team Flash confronting Cicada, and that leading to a very terrible ending for Team Flash, with XS, who is depowered at this point, being punched by a super strength Cicada, and that breaks her back. That moment, or everything that happened at the beginning of the episode, would have just been so much better, so much more intense, so much more nerve-wracking if it wasn't shown in the trailer. I think the trailer did kind of ruin a little bit of this episode. They showed Cicada going on a killing spree, which isn't really much of a surprise in this episode, but really the big thing is that they showed Nora being punched in the back and being paralyzed, if not temporarily, in this episode. Obviously, that whole thing is very reminiscent of what happened to Flash in Season 2, Episode 6, where Zoom beat him half to death, or almost to death, and he wasn't able to walk or run for a week until the next episode. But Nora did, or was able to run and walk at the end of this episode, but that's not the problem. The problem is this moment would have been so intense like it was in Season 2, Episode 6, or maybe at least a little bit, compared to a little bit more than it was in the actual episode, if it was not shown in the trailer. I think that the trailer should have just showed scenes from the ending of the episode with Team Flash fighting Cicada, mainly the Flash fighting Cicada. Like, he's super angry in the trailer. We don't know why. We obviously know that he wants to stop Cicada, but I think that would have been a great trailer without actually spoiling the fact that Nora gets paralyzed, ruining what could have been a pretty intense moment that I did not see coming. But anyway, even though I had some problems with that beginning, it was still a good beginning to the episode, just not amazing like it could have been. So after Nora broke her back, the episode diverged into a couple different storylines. One of them with Nora dealing with said broken back. There was also with Caitlin dealing with Killer Frost and that whole conflict. And obviously Team Flash trying to transport all these metahumans away from Cicada and fighting Cicada. I'll go over all 3 of those storylines and end the review talking about the main storyline of the episode, which is Team Flash and Cicada. So first of all, Nora dealing with being paralyzed. The actual moments between Nora and like Barry or Iris, those were pretty nice moments. They weren't amazing or anything, and I do think that there was like the acting was maybe a little bit off for Nora's actress. I do think that in emotional scenes, she doesn't really do a great job. I think her name is Jessica Parker Kennedy. She doesn't do an incredible job in the emotional scenes, like when she has to be super emotional, like in this episode. It was not great. I do like Barry's reaction to her being paralyzed. Like, we've never seen her this angry before, except for like when he was forced to be angry, like in the first crossover by Rainbow Raider, but we've never seen him this angry before, I don't think, and that was something cool to see. That was mostly in the other storyline with Cicada and T-Flash, which I will touch on more when I get to that, but I do like Barry's reaction. Even though the acting was a little off, I do mostly like the scenes between Nora and Iris, as well as between Nora, Iris, and Barry, and I think my favorite part from this storyline is Sherlock investigating Nora. There's this one scene where Sherlock is talking to Nora, basically interviewing her about the time travel language, and the same language that Barry wrote when he got out of the Speed Force in the beginning of Season 4. I do like this whole storyline with Sherlock investigating Nora. It's honestly one of my favorite parts of Season 5, the connection between Nora and Reverse Flash and Sherlock investigating all of that. I like it like a lot, and even though I would prefer they give Sherlock's whole storyline to Ralph, as they have another detective who does need to be there, while Sherlock is kind of a character that doesn't really need to be there. I don't think that Tom Cavanaugh should be on the show anymore. That's one problem, but I do like Sherlock in general, and I do like his whole storyline a lot. I don't like the scene where Iris pulled out Sherlock from interviewing Nora or investigating Nora and talks about how she used to be a journalist and she looked at these stories and she never got anywhere. She made her quit, trying to explain why she stopped journalizing, if that's even a word, or being a journalist in the previous couple seasons, and it was a stupid explanation, really. She's a terrible journalist, if that's what really made her quit. And in terms of talking to Sherlock in this whole scenario, that did not make any sense. I didn't like that scene. It was stupid. But anyway, in general, I do like this storyline with Sherlock investigating Nora. Nora being paralyzed was fine. It wasn't great or anything. And I think, again, the moment where she was paralyzed would have been so much better if it wasn't in the trailer. All the scenes between Nora, Iris, and Barry probably were not as good as they could have been because the actress for Nora just, I don't think, does a great job in emotional scenes. So next up is the Killer Frost stopping Caitlin from making the cure storyline. Now, I'm going to be pretty negative on this storyline. If you want to skip the negativity, if you want to call it that, there will be a timestamp right here to the part of the video where I start talking about the main storyline of the episode, which I did like quite a lot. This whole storyline, I didn't like it for a couple of reasons. One is the whole premise of the storyline doesn't make any sense, and as such, it feels like it's padding the runtime. It doesn't make any sense because the whole thing is Killer Frost, or Caitlin, is making a cure that is a cure for all metahumans based off the lightning dagger shards, which we have established in the past on the show does not affect Killer Frost, which was addressed in this episode as well. So this whole storyline doesn't make any sense. Why would Killer Frost oppose this whole metahuman cure if it's a cure that would not affect her? And if it does affect her, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I also think this is a storyline we've seen before with Killer Frost and Caitlin trying to, or have some sort of conflict, and in the end they get together and become friends in the end. And one thing I'll say, I don't like the whole dynamic between Caitlin and Killer Frost being two different people. It should either be one person who is Killer Frost or another person who changes into Killer Frost and her whole attitude changes because she's Killer Frost. It shouldn't be a second person, which it is here. I don't like that whole dynamic, and it's something they've used this storyline so many times before with Killer Frost and Caitlin having a conflict and then bonding over something in the end, or becoming friends in the end. So it doesn't make any sense. We've seen it before. It just feels like it's padding the runtime, and I really don't like it. But that brings me to the main storyline of the episode, which is Team Flash transporting metas like Peekaboo, Norvok, a couple other metas we're probably never going to see again out of Cicada's reach. The main focus on this episode was not really transporting those metas. It was mainly Barry getting really, really angry at Cicada because Cicada paralyzed his future daughter. Now, I did like that a lot. I did like seeing Barry be angry. It's not really something we've ever seen before outside of him being forced to be angry, like in the first crossover when Rainbow Raider whammied him, as they kept on calling it, and he was just super angry at everyone. I love that in that crossover. That was really awesome to see. In this episode, we get something similar. He's obviously not as angry, but it is cool seeing Barry really fired up and really angry and really just set on taking a villain down like he is in this episode, and he does succeed. Barry and the Flash just feel so awesome in this episode. It's something that's really missing from the show most of the time. It's something like that we saw in Season 4, Episode 15, where he ran through the Speed Force. He just felt so powerful and so awesome. This just doesn't come as close to that episode, but it is still pretty great. We see how when Barry knows what he's doing, he can take down villains like Cicada, and he does pretty easily. He gets the help of Killer Frost, obviously, but he does take down Cicada, and he goes all out, and I loved all of that in this episode. Just seeing the Flash use his all, really go all out with his powers, get super angry, that is something that I just loved to see in this episode. That being said, the storyline of Team Flash transporting the metahumans to somewhere to keep them safe or to help them like they did in Season 1 and 4 have been done before in Season 1 with Rogue Aaron and Season 4 with Fury Rogue. Now, this episode does not have the word rogue in it, but it does have red, which in French is rogue, so at least that is pretty close, which basically I know because I made a typo in my most popular video ever where I spelled rogue wrong, and I spelled it like how it's spelled in French, which means red, which a comment has pointed out to me. But anyway, I think that might have been on purpose. Every single time they have Team Flash transporting metahumans, it has the word red or rogue in it, which in French are the same word. But anyway, I didn't mind that they did this again. I don't mind that they do this again. I thought I would from the trailer, but I honestly didn't. Now, I did mind seeing Norvok back. I really don't like Norvok. I think his powers are so ridiculously stupid. Now, he doesn't have his powers anymore because Amy Black cut the snake out of his eye, but still, I think that the actor is a terrible actor, and I still think he's terrible. In this episode, he was god-awful, and I really hope we don't see him again. I really hope that Cicada would kill him, maybe even kill Peekaboo, maybe kill all of the metas in this episode. That would have been an insane moment at the end of this episode, but all of the metas got away, which is not as good of an ending, but it is still not a bad ending either. I just don't like Nora, and I don't like that they gave him this redemption arc, I guess we would call it that in this episode, because it entails that he will like return again, which if he does, I'm really not excited for. Again, his powers, which he doesn't have anymore, are so ridiculously stupid. The actor's bad, and his backstory, which was told in this episode, it's nothing, really. It's really nothing, so I don't like that character. Peekaboo's fine, she didn't really do anything, and she's basically a recurring villain on the show in not any given season, so that's whatever. Doesn't really matter, but I did like Ralph helping the metahumans onto the helicopter. That was a good scene. I missed Ralph in general, and we haven't seen him use his powers in such a long time, probably because they cost a lot of money to use, and we actually haven't seen Ralph in a couple weeks either, so he was cool to see back. Him using his powers was cool to see. That whole scene was also pretty great. We also had some fight scenes between Cicada and Team Flash, like characters like Killer Frost and the Flash, which were pretty great fight scenes as well. In conclusion, the ending of the episode is really where this episode really shines, with Cicada and the Flash facing off against each other. We saw how angry the Flash can get, and we really saw how awesome and badass he can get as well. Seeing Elongated Man return was great as well, but before that, there wasn't really much great in this episode. There was Sherlock investigating Nora, which was pretty cool to see, but the actual storyline with Nora being paralyzed, Killer Frost and Caitlin's storyline, those weren't great, and the beginning of the episode would have been so much better if it wasn't spoiled in the trailer. So there are a lot of ups and downs, some in between, but I will give this episode an 8.9 out of 10. But let me know what you thought about the episode in the comments down below, and if you like this video, don't forget to leave a like, share, and subscribe, and thanks for watching.